Sri Lankan economy has been poorly managed for years. It has a fundamental problem: it imports more than it exports, resulting in a trade deficit. In addition, there's also a budget deficit, which has contributed to the country's economic woes. Large trade deficits are a problem for many nations, but Sri Lanka's situation is particularly complicated. The Sri Lankan government's response to the crisis has been disastrous, as they have expanded their debt rather than trying to narrow down the deficit. The governments have borrowed heavily from other countries and agencies, which has led to a debt-to-GDP ratio of 111%, meaning it owes more than it produces. The island is home to a variety of natural treasures, including breathtaking beaches, renowned wildlife, and other attractions. This resulted in an enormous spike in tourism, and for decades, country's growth has been significantly fueled by the tourism industry, which provides foreign exchange, funds for government spending, and imports. But Sri Lanka was made aware of its scars in 2019. Massive terrorist attacks that occurred on Easter Sunday 2019 severely damaged the country's main source of income, instantly reducing the number of tourists from 244,000 per month to just 38,000. Under the threat of economic stagnation and rising social unrest, Sri Lanka elected Gotabaya Rajapaksa as the president. Gotabaya's party scored a resounding win in parliament, and he selected his brother as prime minister in response to an opposition party that was perceived as being too weak to manage internal challenges. Gotabaya swiftly began revising the constitution with a two-thirds majority, giving him the power to select several high-ranking officials, such as ministers and judges. He filled these posts with family and has been gradually establishing more unchecked control. In light of the downturn in tourism, Gotabaya irresponsibly slashed taxes and started printing large sums of money. The drastic tax cuts led to a decline in Sri Lanka's state coffers, and the country was soon downgraded to near-default levels. Rating agencies raised an alarm, realizing that Sri Lanka may soon run out of money. Investors fled the country, and it became difficult for Sri Lanka to access international markets. The year 2020 was a devastating time for many industries, but none were hit harder than Sri Lanka's tourism industry. The 2019 terrorist attacks on the island nation had already caused a significant drop in tourism, but the pandemic lockdowns completely destroyed hopes of a quick recovery. As a result, Sri Lanka's foreign reserves rapidly dwindled. To make matters worse, the government wanted to keep the exchange rate of the Sri Lankan rupee at 200 to $1. In a free market, currency exchange rates are determined by demand. The Sri Lankan government used its foreign currency reserves to buy rupees and maintain the exchange rate. If they bought just enough, the demand for both currencies would return, and the exchange rate of 200 rupees per US dollar could be maintained. But this meant that the country was burning through its foreign reserves at an alarming rate, and the government's revenue collapsed while the budget deficit widened. Gotabaya Rajapaksa, however, was not done. In April 2021, he banned all chemical fertilizers, claiming it was for health reasons. But the truth is that the dramatic drop in reserves has caused the government to enact strange policies like banning the importation of fertilizer, in hopes of easing its trade deficit. However, this decision had unintended consequences. Rice production, a staple in Sri Lanka, fell by 50%. The country was forced to import rice, something that had not happened in years. In July, Sri Lanka banned the import of luxury goods, as the country was scrambling to save dollars. The people of Sri Lanka have been hit hard by these economic policies, resulting in hardship and uncertainty. But then, in early 2022, the unthinkable happened. Russia invaded Ukraine. While Sri Lanka is thousands of miles away from the conflict, the extenuating economic circumstances put the nail in the coffin. Ukraine and Russia are by far the largest exporters of wheat in the world, and Russia is also the second largest exporter of petroleum. In the wake of the invasion, the West implemented massive sanctions. The cost of importing food and energy has skyrocketed. Only a month after the invasion, the Sri Lankan government could no longer afford to keep the exchange rate fixed. In a matter of days, the rupee lost 30% of its value. Just a month after the country's foreign reserves dropped to almost zero, Sri Lanka announced that it will no longer be able to make its annual debt payments and is seeking to renegotiate the terms of its debts. Problems are further accelerated by ongoing trends in the global economy. The United States economy, due to being showered with stimulus money over the past couple of years, is overheating, and inflation is at its highest level in over 40 years. As such, the Fed has begun to pursue an aggressive increase in interest rates, which not only affects the US but dramatically increases the cost of borrowing money across the world. For now, basic necessities in Sri Lanka have become too expensive. The rupee is now just half of its original value, and the country is struggling to make ends meet. The economic crisis is having a significant impact on the country's education system. Schools have stopped testing for certain grades because they can't afford to buy ink. The situation in Sri Lanka has reached a critical point. With rapid inflation, shortages of basic necessities like food and energy, and a collapsing economy, the people of Sri Lanka are suffering. As the cost of food continues to rise, people are hoarding as much as they can, fearing that they won't be able to afford it tomorrow. This has led to major shortages, leaving many families hungry and struggling to survive. At least 500,000 Sri Lankans have fallen into poverty within a few months. To save on energy imports, the government has instituted daily 15-hour blackouts. While this may save money, it has crippled industries and left many people without access to basic services. Medicines are not available, and critical surgeries are being cancelled, leaving patients in a vulnerable position. It is being mentioned by doctors that the economic crisis may kill more people than COVID-19 did. Sri Lanka's banks have been placed on a negative rating watch due to the country defaulting on $51 billion external debt. All sections of society are affected by the economic crisis, leading to widespread suffering. The situation has become so dire that the nation has declared a state of emergency. With little hope for a large enough immediate bailout and worsening global economic trends, the situation and the suffering of the average Sri Lankan will likely worsen. The fear of devastating domestic conflict and starvation looms over the country. But this is not where the story ends.